Welcome back to the Military Times Reporters Roundtable, where we bring you the inside stories behind the week's biggest headlines. I'm Leo Shane, Capitol Hill Bureau Chief for Military Times. With me again this week are Megan Myers, our Pentagon Bureau Chief, and Howard Altman, our Managing Editor. Good to see you both again. Thanks for coming on. Our first topic of the week concerns Iraq. President Joe Biden just announced the United States will end its combat mission there by the end of the year under a new agreement with the Iraqi Prime Minister. That's going to come as a surprise to a lot of troops, though, since there really hasn't been direct combat there for quite some time. Howard, you were following this closely this week. Explain what's going on and what troops need to know about this.
Well, as you said, Leo, President Biden and Iraqi Prime Minister Kadhimi came to an agreement and announced that by the end of the year, the U.S. combat mission in Iraq will no longer exist. That is what that really means is unclear because the U.S. has not been involved in combat operations on the ground in Iraq in quite some time. There's still airstrikes that are carried out, but on the ground, it's been several years since the U.S. had forces on the ground involved in combat. This is more adjusting the reality on the ground. It could be to help Kadhimi, who's up for re-election, his election coming up in Iraq. So what that means to the troops on the ground, I talked to several defense officials who say that no plans have been made, no orders have been changed, nothing yet has taken place that would change anything. And again, that's been the way it has been for a while.
Megan, what's the reaction down at the Pentagon in this? There's about 2,500 troops right now that are in Iraq. Does this really change anything for them at the moment?
It doesn't really, and the Pentagon hasn't really had much to illuminate or push back on this characterization that combat troops are leaving Iraq because, as Howard said, the mission really hasn't been combat for a number of years. It's mostly train, advise, assist of the Iraqis so that they can lead their own combat missions against ISIS. And then there's a small contingent of special operators who will do targeted missions. That's not expected to go away. The de-ISIS mission is not over. That's not part of this announcement. And so there will still be troops going to Iraq. It's just sort of a change in name only as far as anyone can tell right now.
Yeah, it's interesting because it still leaves the administration a lot of wiggle room on what to do if there are problems, if we see that resurgence in ISIS. But kind of confusing for a place that a lot of the public hasn't paid attention to in a while. A lot of the military has been focused there still with troops on the ground. But I think this came as kind of an odd wake-up call to the public that there are still U.S. military presence in Iraq. So let's shift to another story that's causing some anxiety in military circles, and that's a story about a report out of Fort Hood that's Fort Hood officials are investigating about 100 night vision goggles that have gone missing from a repair shop, assumed to be stolen at this point. Howard, how does military equipment like this just go missing?
Well, that's what the folks at CID at Fort Hood would like to know. They're looking at the theft of more than 100 of these night vision goggles. These are worth several $1,000s a piece. Now, they're not the latest version of this technology, but still, it's something that folks like the Taliban like to get their hands on. It's a game changer if you're operating at night. Various bad guys wouldn't mind having them. Frankly, there's collectors, people who like to go around LARPing and playing, soldier at night, wouldn't mind having those and paying, a few $1,000s. The CID at Fort Hood is looking into this situation. That's a lot of night vision goggles to go missing at one time.
Yeah, I mean, they may be an older model, but they're nicer than the pair of goggles I've got for swimming over here. So, Megan, what's the reaction, from the military community on this? It seems like every couple of months we hear one of these stories of either, equipment that's unaccounted for or equipment that's stolen. I mean, this seems really odd for highly sensitive equipment to just go missing.
Unfortunately, equipment does go missing. Probably more for negligence, and accidentally than for dastardly purposes generally. But it does happen. From a repair shop is a little sketchy because you wouldn't expect that, maybe, a squad was accidentally went and locked them up, put them in storage somewhere and just didn't do the paperwork for accountability. Now we don't know where they are. It does seem as if somebody knew, there would be a lot there and that they could move them all quickly, and maybe it wouldn't be as guarded as some other containers where you would find equipment. So it'll be interesting to see who's responsible and where they ended up.
Yeah, clearly one we're going to be watching for a while here. Listen, thanks to you both for coming on today. We'll be covering all of these stories in the weeks to come and the days to come. Thank you for tuning in, and we'll see you next time.